If military overstretch exposed the Roman Empire's limits and political fragmentation shattered its unity, economic strain and demographic decline quietly undermined its capacity to recover. Long before imperial authority collapsed in the West, the economic foundations that sustained that authority were already eroding. The Roman Empire was an extraordinarily expensive system to maintain. Its armies, its bureaucracy, its roads, fortifications, and grain supplies required a continuous flow of revenue. Unlike modern states, Rome lacked flexible mechanisms for economic growth or fiscal reform. It relied overwhelmingly on taxation of land and people, and that system had little tolerance for disruption. By late antiquity, disruption had become the norm. Wars, especially civil wars, devastated provinces repeatedly. Armies consumed food, requisitioned supplies, and destroyed infrastructure. Each campaign left behind abandoned farms, depopulated towns, and reduced productivity. Yet the tax demands of the state did not diminish. On the contrary, as revenue declined, the burden on those who remained increased. This produced a vicious cycle. Small landholders, unable to meet tax obligations, abandoned their property or sought protection under large estates. Cities, once the engines of Roman economic and civic life, shrank as trade declined and municipal offices became financial liabilities rather than honors. The urban middle classes, so essential to Roman administration, slowly disappeared. Wealth did not vanish from the empire, but it concentrated. Large landowners, often protected by influence or exemption, accumulated vast estates worked by dependent laborers. These estates became economically self-sufficient, increasingly detached from the imperial market economy. The result was not prosperity, but fragmentation. Islands of private wealth surrounded by declining public infrastructure. Demographic decline intensified these problems. Plagues, endemic disease, warfare, and declining birth rates reduced population levels across much of the Western Empire. Fewer people meant fewer taxpayers, fewer soldiers, fewer producers. Entire regions became underpopulated, while others struggled to maintain basic services. Rome had once thrived on demographic surplus, on an abundance of manpower that fueled armies, agriculture, and urban life. By the 5th century, that surplus was gone. The state responded not by reforming its expectations, but by tightening its grip. Laws bound peasants to the soil, restricted movement, and enforced hereditary occupations. These measures aimed to stabilize revenue, but instead deepened stagnation. Economic rigidity replaced economic vitality. As public institutions faltered, people turned away from the imperial state toward local solutions. Large landowners provided protection and employment. Bishops organized charity and dispute resolution. Communities became inward-looking, concerned less with imperial prosperity than with survival. This shift had profound political consequences. The Roman state depended on economic participation to sustain authority. When people withdrew from markets, cities, and public offices, the state lost not only revenue but legitimacy. Imperial governance became something imposed from above rather than sustained from within. It is crucial to note that this was not a moral collapse. Contemporary observers sometimes accused Romans of decadence or laziness, but the evidence suggests something different. People adapted rationally to a system that no longer rewarded participation. When service brought ruin rather than honor, withdrawal became sensible. By the time barbarian leaders entered the Western Empire in large numbers, they encountered an economy already weakened and a population already disillusioned. In many regions, the change of rulers brought little immediate economic disruption because the imperial system had ceased to function effectively in everyday life. What collapsed then was not economic activity itself, but the imperial economy as a unified system. Local production continued, land was worked, communities endured. But the mechanisms that linked these activities to a central authority had broken down. Economic strain and demographic decline did not cause Rome's fall in isolation. They ensured that recovery was impossible. Each military defeat, each political crisis struck a society with no reserves left to draw upon. The Western Empire did not starve to death in a single famine. It slowly lost the capacity to feed the institutions that sustained it. In that loss, we see the transition to a medieval world, one defined by localized economies, personal dependencies, and diminished state power. Rome's economy did not disappear. It reorganized at a lower level of complexity, better suited to the realities of early medieval Europe.